Hello and welcome to the Devon Man Shed and another plastic build. Now this I've got in front of me here was something I started a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking forward to building it. I built a few biplanes in my time and they can be a little bit challenging, but this thing here I've got here was absolutely dreadful. I had endless trouble trying to get it to go together properly. The fit on it was terrible. There was shrinkage on the actual sprues, and the shrinkage was happening where the actual numbers of the parts were, so I was struggling to read the numbers, and it just didn't go together properly, and I've sort of given up. The other thing is that prior to having a go at this, I bought a Junkers 88 Revell 1/48 scale, and I've had the same trouble with that. So the last two kits I've attempted have been absolute garbage, to be honest, and I'm getting a little bit fed up with Revell, because I have built some nice planes in their range, but every now and again I get a load of crap such as this, and I just get fed up with it, and it's not enjoyable to build. So what I've done, I've bought this. This is a 1/48 scale Tamiya P-51 Mustang, and this I'm looking forward to putting together because I've seen some of the reviews on YouTube, and it's highly regarded as a kit to put together, and I'm not too sure whether I'm going to do the colour scheme that's on the box. I might veer away from that, but who knows, I don't know yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set my camera up and show you the contents of the box, and then we'll crack on with the build. So I'll see you in a minute. Right, let's have a look inside the box. Well, we've got usual sheet here, giving you some tips regarding tools and methods of removing them from the sprues, knives, etc. Here we have the actual instructions, and these are normally quite good. I don't normally have any issues with Tamiya instructions, and it looks like it's standard build as well, cockpit, fuselage, etc. Now Tamiya obviously make their own paints, so they've got their paint codes here. I'm going to have to cross-reference these, but it's all a bit academic at the moment because I'm not too sure what scheme I'm going to do this plane yet. But I feel confident that these I can cross-reference, and I should have in my stock. We've got the back here, probably different schemes. Yeah. We've got the different schemes here. So we've got 1, 2, 3 different schemes there. You can choose one. Right, we've got one. What looks like a separate sprue there. So we've got 1, 2. Clear parts, 3, 4. So we've only got 4 sprues to this, so it's quite a simple kit to put together. So this shouldn't take too long to build this. Got the decals in there that you can see as well, and decals there. So there we go. That's what I got for me 15 quid delivered. There you go. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the usual format when I build these on camera. I'm going to explain to you the sub-assemblies, and then I shall go off camera and do the assembling, and I shall come back and then show you the actual sub-assembly finished, and just have a chat with you about the quality of the way it's gone together, and any issues I've had with it. So that's my main format for this video. There will be some other videos thrown in between, probably on paints, glues, airbrushes I use, and also how I go about cross-referencing the paints, etc. So I'm going to set my camera up now, and we'll have a look at the first part of the build and take it from there. Okay, so let's have a gander, shall we, and make a start. So it's cockpit area, and the actual figure as well. Don't always get figures in kits. They're always a bonus, though. It's always I quite like doing the detail on these figures. Anyway, it looks like I've got quite a few sub-assemblies here to put together, and it's obviously needs painting as well. Now I shall probably assemble this sub-assembly, ignoring the figure there. I shall probably give it a blanket spray of primer, and then I shall probably hand paint it. So as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's about half a dozen colours there, ignoring the colours for the figure. So there's quite a lot of painting to be done once it's been glued together. And there's also, by the looks of it, it could be decals as well. Don't know. I need to have a look there. But what I normally do with my cockpit areas is I do a bit of dry brushing, and I shall show you that being done. But that gets done once the actual assembly's been put together and completely painted. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go off camera here and do these sub-assemblies, and when I see in the next clip, this should be all done, and then I shall probably show you a bit of dry brushing just to create some highlights on the detail. So I'll see you there. Okay, just to quickly elaborate what I've done here, there's two components that had to be glued together to create a seat. The console here and the foot pedals had to be glued together, and the radiator had to be glued to the cockpit floor. So there wasn't a great deal of gluing. Once those sub-assemblies had dried, I then glued them to the cockpit floor. While they were drying, I went ahead and started to paint the figure. So where I am now is here. So this has been blanket sprayed with me grey primer, and the rest of it's been hand painted. Now I wasn't sure what colour to paint this, because it said this area here needed to be painted the fuselage colour. Now I'm not unsure what colour the fuselage is going to be, and I've decided just to paint it aluminium anyway. I'm not too sure how much of this is going to be seen once the fuselage is together. I'm under the assumption it's just this bit here where the radiator is. So fingers crossed that ain't going to stand out. Now what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to do some dry brushing on this to sort of give it a patina and to sort of highlight the detail. Now I'm not going to make too much of a fuss about this, because at the end of the day this is inside the plane, and up to now I don't really know how much is going to be seen through the cockpit. So I have painted everything, but it's looking a bit bland at the moment, a bit clinical. So I shall show you in the next clip about doing a bit of dry brushing. And before we go on to that, we've got the figure here which I've painted.
that there was hand painted, and it was hand painted with a primer. This primer is just a primer that I use through my airbrush, and it's always handy to have a bit in a pot just to use for a bit of paint brushing. So everything has been primed and top coated. I'm not going to bother spraying a matte varnish over this. I should just leave it as it is. So I'm going to set up my camera now and show you how I go about dry brushing. So I'll see you in a minute. Right, this is how I go about dry brushing. I've got a lovely supple brush here, and what I'll do, this is aluminium paint. This actual aircraft is built of aluminium, so what I'm going to do is create a look of bare aluminium coming through the detail. So I've dipped it in there, and as you can see I'm wiping the majority of it off, and then it's a case of rubbing it over this. Let's bring it over here. I'll suffer with shadows down here in this shed. The lighting's not brilliant. And you just keep doing it until there's no sign of any other paint coming out of the brush. Right, you can probably just see there's a little element on there. That will do. So the technique is to just flick this brush over the parts, do it very lightly, and it should pick up on the edges and any sharp detail. So here we go. I don't know how well this is focusing. Oh, hang on a minute, I've got too much on there. Let's give it another go. Yeah, that's alright. I'm just lightly flicking it over there. I don't know if you can see. It's picking up on the edges. Right, and that will do. Now, I don't know how well you can see that. There. I'm not going to bother doing the figure, but that's just made it a bit more natural looking. Right, I'll see you in the next clip. Okay, so the next stage, looks like I'm going to have to glue this sub-assembly that I've just shown you to both halves of the fuselage. There's a piece there that needs to be glued while it's being joined together. Plus, this highlighting here means there's a bit of painting involved, so I shall brush paint that. It looks like it's XF1, which off the top of my head I think is black again. So that I shall glue together, but I will also do this stage here where we've got the upper engine cowling, the exhaust, and this air scoop here. It looks like it needs to be glued as well. So I'll do those two, and then I'll show you the finished bit in the next clip. Okay, just to quickly elaborate on what I've done here. This cockpit assembly has been glued to both halves of the fuselage. They are obviously been glued together as well, along with this piece here. The upper engine cowling here has been added, and I had a choice of two different types of exhaust outlets, and I've also added this air scoop. Now the other thing I decided to do as well is to glue this part here to the lower wing. So that's an added bit that I've done. It's flagging up that it should be some areas that require painting, but I'm not going to bother with that because I'm going to blanket spray this fuselage, and there's pointless painting that because it would have to be masked up, and I don't want that bother. So this is the fuselage. Now I've gone over the actual glued seams with a bit of 320 emery cloth to remove any glue that's oozed out of the seam, and then I've gone over with this. This is like a cheap scouring pad you can get in supermarkets. I think I bought a pack of 10 for 80p or something, and these are ideal just for removing any scratches that you've generated or file marks where you've had to rub down the areas to remove the glue. And this has gone together really well. I had no issues with it whatsoever. As far as I'm aware at the moment, there are no gaps that need to be filled. This actually looks like a gap, but I think that's supposed to be there. So that's the fuselage done, and there's the part I've done on the lower wing. Now I painted this aluminium because this part here, which is part of the cockpit assembly, I had to paint the colour of the fuselage. Now I did decide to spray this in aluminium. Now I bought this quite some time ago. This is a Vallejo metal colour aluminium, and this is supposed to be for airbrushing. You're supposed to tip it straight out the bottle into your airbrush and it's supposed to work, but for some reason or other my airbrush kept blocking up, and I tried another airbrush and it done exactly the same with that, and I was finding that when the paint was being emitted through the airbrush, it was dumping little tiny particles on the surface, and I'm thinking to myself, well, what's going on here? So I don't know what's happened to this paint, but it's basically bloody useless for airbrushing now. I'm going to have to resign it to being used for brushing, hand brushing. Now the other thing was that I've got another Vallejo aluminium here in a small bottle, and I decided to try this, and I had the same trouble with this as I had with this. It seems as if the paint's been contaminated with bits of dried up paint. I don't know why it's happened, but it's basically forced me into a corner to spray this plane a completely different colour to what they're suggesting. So I'm going to go on Google Images and see if I can flag up a colour scheme involving a camouflage scheme. So that's where I am with this, and I did try this on an old kit actually. I had a pair of wings that I had from an old kit, and that's what I used to just practice on. So that is a waste of time. That's fit for landfill, those paints. So what I'm going to do now that I've glued that bottom bit to that bottom wing, it's now a case of gluing this lower wing to the fuselage. adding the other halves to the wing. Tail plane needs to be glued. The flaps need to be glued. There's a vent there needs to be done. Various small little items need to be glued to the wing, and down here it's probably a suggestion whether you can leave this open or closed. So what I'm going to do, that's 6, isn't it? That's 7. Yeah, I shall go off camera and get all this done, and then I'll come back to you and have a chat about the actual fitting of everything. Now what I'm going to do next, I'm just going to give you a little short video about the glues I use, and then I'll see you in the next process. So I'll see you then. Okay, I'm just going through with you regarding the glues. I've got an ultra thin super glue here. Next to it there's just ordinary plastic cement glue. This is a Revell glue, and the only reason I buy this Revell product is down to the fact that it's got a nice applicator on it. We come to this is Tamiya extra thin cement. This has actually got a brush on the end of the cap, and the nice thing about this glue is it's so thin that once you've loaded that brush up with some glue and dab it on a seam, you can actually see the glue run around that joint. It's got a capillary action to it, and I use this more than the other glues because I find it dries very quick as well. A medium viscosity super glue, you can get this anywhere. It's got its uses. I don't use it that often. I use the ultra thin more because it's got an action very similar to this one. This is the important one. Whenever you glue clear plastic parts, it's always best to use PVA glue. Previous to this I was using a white PVA wood glue and it worked fine, but I went out and bought this, but I don't think there's a lot of difference in it, to be honest. If you use super glues or cements with your clear parts, these give off a vapour and they make your clear parts go all frosted. While we're on the subject of super glues, you see I've got these little applicators here. I bought a pack of 50 of those off Amazon. Absolute godsend, because the manufacturers they never seem to supply a decent nozzle on their glue bottles. They always seem to have too large a hole on them. So these I bought, I think I bought a 50 for just over a £5, I think. And although glue runs down over the outside of that tube and blocks it, I've never had to actually unblock the inside of the tube, so they work quite well. Unlike the Revell here, sometimes I have to pump a bit of wire down there. This is a bit of push bike cable here, and these strands I just unwind, and they're about the right size to poke down through there to clear the blockage. Super glue accelerator, I use this. This is in a spray can. You can get these in little tiny pumps, etc. And when you spray this onto super glue, it sets it off immediately. Saves a lot of hassle in having to hold parts while the glue goes off. So there you go. That's the glues I'll be using in the build. Okay, so I glued the lower half of the wing to the fuselage. Absolutely perfect fit, that, which is a bonus, because if this is out of alignment, it throws everything else out. But fortunately, this went together really well. So the top halves of the wings were glued to the bottom half, and I never had any fit issues with those either. Absolutely perfect the way they went together. The rear wings as well, they fitted nicely. I didn't have to support them. Sometimes when you insert the rear wings on a build, they tend to droop down, but these were a nice friction fit, and once I applied the glue and pushed them in, they were more or less at the right angle. Got the flaps down here that we then added. I struggled with these and then realised that these little pieces of plastic here had to be removed. They were left on there in case you wanted to build it with the flaps down, so I didn't bother with that, so I removed those bits of plastic and then they fitted into the wing. Again, absolutely perfect. I had no trimming to do whatsoever. The rear scoop here was glued. I've glued it so it's in the open position. I've got these little tank supports that have been glued to the wings. I had to drill 2 holes before I put the upper wing on. There was marks on the wing there that you could drill through, because you don't always have to build this with tanks attached to the wings. So the next bit was the air intake here. That was a lovely fit as well, although there was no location for that, but I managed to use the Revell glue, which sort of held it in position, and that's glued fine. And that's it. That's as far as I've gone with it, and here it is. I laid some super glue along here, and although this looks like a gap, I think I've actually filled that gap with some ultra thin super glue. So although that's looking gappy, I'm hoping that when I spray this with a primer, that should be okay. But if it's not, I'll just rub it back and do some filling. But it all went together really well. Well chuffed with the way that's gone together. Now, since the last clip, I have decided that I'm going to have to spray this silver. When I went on Google Images, every P-51D Mustang had bare metal panels on it, apart from the British version. Apparently the RAF had a few of these in their squadron, and which is all very well, but I haven't got the right decals to build a British version. So I'm going to have to resort to using my Tamiya silver here. It's a titanium silver, and it's a little bit darker than an aluminium. Not by a lot, but it's the only option I've got, unfortunately, because I've got no other silver in my paint rack here. The Vallejo ones are crap. They're fit for the bin. I'm going to have to buy some more of those. So it looks like I'm still going down the route of spraying this silver. So the next stage, where are we? Well, 6, number 7, here we go. We've got the undercarriage here, and the I'll take it this is drop tanks. Now these here I'm going to assemble off camera, and I'm going to paint them off camera as well, and then glue them as a painted finished item to the undercarriage. The same with the tanks here. So where it's showing you here of them being glued here, these will probably be glued onto those supports when I've finished spraying the actual airframe. Pointless gluing those on there now, because they're going to be in the way, and I'm going to have to mask them up. So those are going to be left off. The undercarriages are going to be left off. I think the undercarriage flaps here I can probably glue, leave those on. So that's me next stage. I don't know what the next one is here. Let's have a look. Oh, we've got the prop and things. I think I'll leave that to the next video clip. So that's what I'm going to do now. The undercarriage, the rear tail wheel, flaps, and the drop tanks. So I'll see you then. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just go through with you regarding priming this airframe, because it's 95% finished. I've glued the undercarriage flaps on. I've got to be careful while handling this in case I break those. You'll also notice I've stuffed some cotton wool down in the cockpit to act as a masking medium. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to spray this with a dark primer. Now you're supposed to use a dark primer when spraying silvers and aluminiums, because the actual primer can influence the actual finish on the top coat. So what I've done here, not having a black primer, I've mixed my normal light grey primer with a Vallejo 057 matte black, and I've created a very dark grey with this, so this will have to suffice as a dark primer. Going back to this again, as you're aware, I've got to use this because my actual aluminium paints are knackered. I've had a spray of this and it is very slightly darker than the aluminium, so I might be able to get away with using this. And for the other accents on the fuselage, I'm going to use this olive drab. I don't know exactly what parts I'm going to spray with this, but this is going to be sprayed on top of the silver. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to set me airbrush up, and I'll show you me spraying it with a primer, and hopefully if it all goes well, I shouldn't need to do any filling. I can only find out once I've done the primer, so I might have to do some filling once the primer's dried if I find I've got some gaps somewhere, so we'll see. Anyway, I'll set the spray booth up and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I'm using my Chinese airbrush here, which is a 0.3 needle, and I'm running at 18 psi. So away we go, let's see what happens. Probably can't see too well because trying to spray a large plane in here and trying to keep a close up is a bit awkward. The airbrush is starting to spit. It's because I've made a concoction up and I've mixed ordinary matte paint with a primer, and it's bound to happen. But anyway, all I do is when that happens, I get a cotton bud and just clean the crown in here, and you can see the build up of paint. But once I've twisted that around a couple of times, it's ready to go again. But I need to let that dry for a minute and come back to that. Okay, this primer coat's been a success. I'm just going to finish off the back end here, which is where I've been holding it. There we go. Right. So in the next clip I should be ready to spray this with that silver, but I'm going to let this harden off for a couple of hours before I go near that. I've got no masking up to do on it. I'm just going to completely spray that fuselage now, spray the silver. So I'll see you then. Okay, so what we're going to do, give this a coat of silver using that X32 Tamiya. I've got my Harder and Steenbeck airbrush here. This is a 0.4 needle. I'm leaving the air pressure at 18 psi. So fingers crossed, I'm hoping that this will spray okay. But we can only wait and see. Anyway, let's give it a go. The trick is to not to put it on too thick. Because if you accidentally flood it, what will happen, you'll get a dark spot and it will stand out. I'm just going to let that dry a bit. Well, up to now there's no debris on there and I'm not having a problem with the airbrush. All in all, it's looking okay. I'm going to let that dry again, and I think what I'll do now is I'll show you the final coat, because I'm going to have to wait for this to dry for about 5 minutes in between coats. So the next clip will probably be the final coat being put on, probably on the back end here perhaps. So I'll see you then. Okay, so the final coat on the back, everything's going hunky dory. Something's going to go wrong in a minute, got to. That's a difficult bit, getting in there. A bit more confident now. Yeah, I'm well chuffed with that. The lighting in here is pretty poor. I'm just about seeing there. I think I've got in there. There we go. Well, I'm well chuffed with that. That's come out a treat. Right, catch you in the next clip. Right, I'm going to show you what I use to cross-reference my paints. I've got an app called a Hobby Color Converter. This is available on Google Play. It don't cost you anything. Now here we have a list of all the paint manufacturers. Now I'm building a Tamiya kit at the moment, and obviously they have their own range of paints, so I want to cross-reference a Tamiya paint with a Vallejo Model Air paint. So we'll hit on Tamiya, we'll hit on XF, which is the matte colours. Now at the top of the screen here we've got XF1 black flat, so we'll click on that. And here's a list of all the paints from the other manufacturers that will match Tamiya's paint. Now I know for a fact that Vallejo Model Air paints all start with a designation 71, so there's 71057 there, so I click on that and there we have it, Vallejo Black Matte 057. Now probably 80% of the time I'm doing a cross-reference I can find something, but you can't always guarantee a colour match, and what you're going to have to do then is just basically Google what you're trying to find and see if there's anybody out there on a forum or something that can give you an idea what to use as a replacement for the one that they're requesting. Now the other good thing about this is if I click on Vallejo here, here's the Model Air range. These ticks that you can see going down the side here, these are what I've generated, and this is basically a list of paints that I have in stock. So when I'm cross-referencing and you get a match, you obviously get it, and you've got that in stock, you obviously get a tick alongside of it just to verify it. And it's always handy to have so that you know exactly what paints are in your stock. So that's another bonus with this app, is being able to keep on top of what paints you have. So that's what I use for cross-referencing. I don't think there's anything else I can talk about on this. That's basically what I use this for. Now what I should probably do now is show you where I've got to with the plane, and have a chat with you about how I got on with it. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so while that airframe was drying, I went ahead and assembled the undercarriage. Once this was glued together along with the drop tanks here, everything was blanket sprayed. The undercarriage was blanket sprayed silver, and all the extra touching up such as the tyres was done afterwards. The drop tanks I've done a different colour to what the instructions have said. The undercarriage flaps, we've already done that, and then it was a case of fitting the undercarriage to the airframe. This went together really nice. There are some lovely location points that supported the undercarriage while it was drying, which is a bonus, and the drop tanks as well, which I ended up super gluing those in. They never had very much area to support while the glue was drying, so it was a quick glue job. That rear wheel has been painted. There was no assembly regarding that, and I've done the touching up with the tyres, etc. That has been sprayed a different colour to what they say in the instructions. We then come to the prop assembly. This again all went together really well. I had to leave this main assembly to dry overnight, and then I fixed the actual spinner afterwards. Now this again has been sprayed with a primer. This was done all black. This I've done a different colour to what they've mentioned in the kit. And the other thing was that this little surround here, you had a choice of either using this or choosing a different canopy. I decided to use this actual moulding, so I shall be using this particular canopy here to glue it to. Now this was sprayed as well off the fuselage. This was glued with PVA glue because I was a bit concerned about normal glue running down the side of the fuselage. So that was glued with PVA, and that's where we are, folks. Obviously the canopy hasn't been finished yet because that's the very last thing I'm going to do, and this is where we are with it. Now I have to apologise for the shadows in this shed. Right, to just reiterate, the spinner has all been completed and glued on. This can either be glued or left loose. It's like a spindle that you can push it onto so that the props can revolve if you want to. I've actually glued it. The actual exhaust outlets here, I've added a bit of copper to that. This here. All I've done is just roughly painted those exhaust outlets just to give the impression that there's a bit of heat transfer. Now this area here, which is blue on the box art, I've actually gone ahead and sprayed it with olive drab, this here. And I've actually gone a little lower than the blue trim on the box art. I've taken it down to this panel line here. So with that done olive and the spinner done olive, I think it's looks a lot better. I was planning on doing the actual rudder this colour, but I decided against it in the end. This is the bit I was on about that I've glued with PVA glue, and the undercarriage. Like I say, these were super glued because I had to glue them in position. There was no way of me supporting them. so those were instantly glued. These were left overnight to dry, and the tail wheel as well. So that's where we are, folks. Now obviously the next thing I've got to do, now normally on a plain build, because the fuselage has been sprayed with a matte paint, I normally spray my airframes with a gloss so that the decals apply themselves properly. If you try to put decals on a matte surface, they don't adhere very well, and you get something called silvering with them. Now because this has been sprayed with a gloss, I'm not going to bother with that. So what I'm going to do now is put the transfers on, and once that's done, I'll show you in the next clip what I plan to do after that. So I'll see you in the next clip. Okay, so out of the 4 schemes, I've chosen scheme B, this one here, and it's been a success. The decals went on really well. I never had any breakages, and they seem to remove themselves off the backing paper really nice. I do tend to use warm water and a splash of washing up liquid, because I do find that helps the decals slide. So what I'm going to do now is give this a blanket spray of Humbrol matte coat. This will calm the finish down, and it will also seal the decals as well. So what I'm going to do is going to set up my spray booth, and I'll show you a bit of spraying. So I'll see you then. Okay, so I've loaded my airbrush up. I'm using my Chinese brush here, 0.3 needle at 18 psi, and where we go. There, I'll let that dry for a minute. Okay, so I've given the top half of the plane a couple of coats. I'm just going to do the bottom half now. Right, I'll give that a second coat, and then I'll make sure that I've done all the covering, particularly around those drop tanks. Looks like I might have to turn it up the other way to get at the drop tanks to get a decent coat on it. So other than that, that's it. So in the next clip you should see this all completed with the canopy painted and attached. So I'll see you then. Right folks, so there she is, all completed. I've just glued the canopy on using PVA glue. It's not quite dried yet. You can probably see a bit of the white glue still showing, but that will dry transparent. So all in all, it's been a very good build. I've thoroughly enjoyed building this. It's gone together really nice. No fit issues. I had no issues with the mouldings, instructions or anything. Absolute cracking kit this is. It's just a shame that I had to use a slightly darker aluminium for the fuselage because of the problem I had with me paints. But I think it's a decent compromise. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's okay. I'm happy with it anyway. And obviously I didn't copy the box art. I went down the route of olive drab for the upper nose, and I've done around the bottom of the canopy as well, and the spinner as well. So I've done my own little thing on it in a way. So yeah, it's been a good build that. So I shall be probably making another video soon. What that will be I don't know, but it won't be far behind this one. So in the meantime, thanks for watching, and also thanks for all my subscribers out there, and I'll see you soon. Bye.